Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our series, The New World Order and Bible Prophecy. I am your host, Joshua Fontanilla. Let's get right into it. So we are in lesson number 3 in our series of 9 lessons. We're looking at the New World Order and Bible Prophecy. Again, it's the swamp, it's the Illuminati, it's the establishment, it's the powers that be in the world today that are pushing us towards a world government, which we have looked at the basic parts of it so far. And the last lesson, we looked at the connection between the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. Our goal being to understand Revelation, but we're going back to Daniel first, and then we're going to come back to Revelation to really understand the prophecies. Today's lesson, I like to call this Prophecy 101, because this is the basics. If you understand this lesson, if you understand Daniel 2 and 7, which is our subject today, you will have the basis for understanding all of end time prophecy. It is that important, and it is that amazing of a lesson. So stick around. We're going to have some fun today. And then the next lesson, we're going to look into who the Antichrist is, the little horn of Daniel 7. Famous topic. And then we're going back to the book of Revelation. So we're laying the groundwork in Daniel, bringing it back to Revelation. All right. So again, this lesson is called Prophecy 101 because it is the basics of understanding end times prophecy. And we're going to try to look at 2 chapters today, Daniel chapters 2 and 7 at the same time. And you will see why we're going to do those at the same time as we go along. All right. So first, a little quick review. We saw that Revelation chapter 13, which is the chapter, the center of the book of Revelation, this is what we really want to understand. It's the mark of the beast chapter, right? It's the end times chapter. That's what we really want to understand. But it quotes Daniel 7. So we saw that in Revelation 13, the first couple verses, there is this beast that comes out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns. It has, it's like a leopard, the feet's like the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion. So you see these 4 characteristics here: 10 horns, like a leopard, feet like the feet of a bear, mouth as the mouth of a lion. But if you are a student of prophecy, and if you know the book of Daniel, you would know right away that this is quoting Daniel 7. See, what the Bible does is it encodes, it symbolizes its meaning using the rest of the Bible. That way outsiders don't know what it's talking about. Because remember, this is going to be dangerous. If you're talking about the rise and fall of world empires, Revelation is written in the time of the Roman Empire. Do you think the Roman Caesars want a bunch of people in their kingdom talking about how Rome is eventually going to be replaced by another kingdom? No, that would be treason to them. So the Bible God very wisely encoded or symbolized, or, he put it in cryptic language that outsiders would not understand. What is all these beasts? But if you are someone who's familiar with the Bible, you know what it's talking about. And the message gets across. So right away, if you're reading Revelation 13, the first couple verses, you're thinking, wait. That sounds like Daniel 7. Daniel 7 saw the same 4 beasts. A beast like a lion coming out of the sea. Same idea. Another second beast like a bear. Third beast like a leopard. And the 4th one had 10 horns. It's the same 4, but in the opposite order. And we'll see why in a second. We touched on that briefly in the previous lesson. So we want to understand Revelation, but Revelation 13, but Revelation's quoting Daniel. So we go back to Daniel 7. We start there. And then when we go to Daniel 7, we see 4 great beasts. These great beasts, which are 4, and then it tells you what they mean. They are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. And then, so that was verse 17 of Daniel 7. Verse 23 says, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom on earth. So you do not need to guess what these beasts symbolize in prophecy. The Bible tells you what it means. A beast in prophecy is a kingdom. The 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom. Nowadays, we would say a nation or a country. So a beast in prophecy is a nation. This is very simple language, very simple symbolism. We do the same thing today. For example, If you think of, and I'm not talking about the Bible here, I'm just talking about examples today. If you think of a bald eagle, what country does that symbolize? It's the United States. If you think of a panda bear, what does that symbolize? It symbolizes China, or sometimes China will use a dragon. And we talked about this idea before in the previous lesson. France is symbolized by a rooster. So in the world, we use the idea of a animal as like a mascot or a symbol for a country, and that's all the Bible's doing. And the key to understanding these prophecies is to look at the way that that animal or that beast is described, and the characteristics of it in the prophecy tell you which country it's symbolizing. Simple, right? All right, that's the idea. You do not need to guess. This is not vague stuff that nobody can understand. The Bible tells you what it means. The fourth beast is the fourth kingdom on the earth. All right, Daniel 2 also speaks of 4 countries, 4 kingdoms, but it uses a different symbol. So what you see is that Revelation 13 quotes Daniel 7. Follow with me. Revelation quotes Daniel 7, same 4 beasts. But once you look into Daniel, you realize Daniel 7 is really just a repetition of Daniel chapter 2, which also shows 4 kingdoms, but it uses a different symbol than beasts. Okay? So now you're starting to see why we're going to look at Daniel 2 and 7 at the same time. It's the same 4 kingdoms using different symbols. All right. Let me give you an example of this, what I mean by this. If you are familiar with the story of Joseph, one of my favorite stories in all of the Bible, you know that Joseph interpreted the prophecy or the dream from Pharaoh. Pharaoh had a dream, or 2 dreams, and he could not understand what they meant, and so he brought Joseph out of prison to explain the dreams. So the Pharaoh dreamt of fat cows and skinny cows, and fat grain and skinny grain, and in his dream the skinny cows eat the fat cows and the skinny grains eat the fat grains. Joseph tells him in Genesis chapter 41, and I recommend reading the whole thing. We don't have time for that right now, but verses 14 through 32. But he tells him in verse 25, he says, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. So there's 2 dreams, but they're symbolizing the same thing. 7 skinny cows, 7 fat cows. 7 skinny grain, 7 fat grain. These 2 symbols, cows and grain, it's a repetition. It's the same thing using different symbols. Get it? That is what's happening in Daniel chapter 2 and 7. So don't be surprised by this. This is a pattern in the Bible. Jesus does the same thing. He tells many parables using different symbols that are talking about the same thing. Go look up, do a search on your phone Bible, and do a search on the kingdom of heaven is like, some kind of phrase like that. And you'll see Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven to many different symbols, but it's all talking about the same thing. That's the idea in Daniel 2 and 7. 2 different types of symbols, but the same point. All right. So Daniel 2 and 7 are parallels. They make the same point. They speak about the same 4 kingdoms using different symbols. Now, this is not something that I have made up by myself. This is something that Bible scholars and commentators have recognized for centuries, literally centuries. But here's a modern example. This is from the Bible Project, which I really like their videos. I don't agree with everything they say, but which 2 people agree on everything, right? But there's some very useful stuff in this. And this is kind of their summary page of what the entire book of Daniel, the structure of it, what it means. And they have Daniel 1 is kind of an intro, and then the ending chapters from 8 to 12 are kind of the outro. But in the center here, they show that there are these parallel chapters. Chapters 4 and 5. You see how there's like a little link there? Chapters 4 and 5 are parallels. Nebuchadnezzar's pride, Belshazzar's pride. Chapters 3 and 6 are parallels. The fiery furnace, the lion's den. It's, similar stories of persecution. And then chapters 2 and 7, they say are parallels. So again, I'm not the only one who's noticed this. This is very obvious. The king's dream of the 4 different types of metals, we'll look at this in a second, symbolizing 4 kingdoms, and the 4 beasts symbolizing 4 kingdoms. And it shows that these two are parallels. All right, so that's enough introduction. Let's get into these chapters and explain what they mean. Now, right at the beginning, I'm going to show you that the Bible explains these chapters, and we do not need to guess what these things mean. So many people who try to study prophecy and they try to explain prophecy do not let the Bible explain itself. And so they just come up with ideas that sound maybe, but the first key is, what does the Bible tell you it means? All right. So Daniel 2:31 intros the vision of the king of Babylon. And it says, in your vision, your majesty, you saw standing before you a huge shining statue of a man. And this is the artist's depiction of it in the background. It's another way of saying an image or an idol. It's a statue of a man. Okay. He tells him later in verse 36, after he tells he describes the dream, he says, that was the dream. Now we will tell the king what it means. So, do you need to guess what this dream means? No. Question? Do we have to guess what the prophecy means? Answer, no. Daniel says right away, I'm going to tell you. We will tell you what the dream means. Okay? So read what he says before you start guessing yourself. That's my advice to people who are trying to study this. Read how he explains it, how the Bible explains it. Okay. So starts with the description of the dream before he tells you what it means. He says, in your vision, your majesty, this is Daniel, the prophet, speaking to the king of Babylon. Daniel lived during the time of the Babylonian Empire. He was in exile in Babylon. He says, in your vision, your majesty, you saw standing before you a huge shining statue of a man. And again, this is an artist's depiction of that. The head of the statue was made of gold. So you can see here, it looks like it's this golden head on this giant idol. Its chest and arms were of silver. Its belly and thighs were of bronze or brass. Same idea. Its legs were iron. And then its feet were a combination of iron and baked clay. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 4th one kind of continues. The iron continues, but it's mixed up a little and changed. But the main idea is 4, and we'll see that Daniel says that. So this is the interpretation, and I recommend reading the entire chapter. As usual, we don't have time to go verse by verse in this. Read it on your own. I highly recommend that. See if there's anything that you think I'm missing, and call me out in the comments if you think so. I think you'll find that I'm treating this fairly. But read it for yourself. You always want to check what people say, especially when it comes to the Bible. So here are the 4 kingdoms. Daniel, this is his interpretation now. Daniel to the king, he says, you are the head of gold. So the king of Babylon, and by extension, the kingdom of Babylon itself, is the head of gold. So he tells you what the first kingdom is. He says, after you will arise another kingdom inferior to yours. So there's going to be a second kingdom. All right. That's going to be the one of silver. And then verse 39, then a third kingdom of bronze or brass. It's the same thing. That's the third kingdom. And then the 4th kingdom shall be strong as iron. So Daniel mentions 4 kingdoms. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. He does not mention a 5th. That's the idea. 4 world empires. And then he talks about how the 4th one is divided, and that's why it's the same kingdom, the 4th one, but it's divided into pieces. That's why it's part iron and part clay. The iron continues into the toes, and obviously 2 feet, 10 toes. It's 10 toes. Okay. So that's the idea. Now, notice the parallels. 4 kingdoms symbolized by 4 different types of metals. The last one broken into 10. Read the whole chapter. You'll see the details there. Notice the parallels between Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. Daniel 7 sees 4 beasts. So instead of 4 metals, he sees 4 beasts. And the last one has 10 horns, just like the last one had 10 toes. Right? Interesting. So Daniel said, Daniel spoke, saying, "I saw in my vision by night 4 great beasts come out of the sea." He didn't see 5. He didn't see 6. No, he saw 4. It's the same 4. It's very simple. And we know what the first one is. It's Babylon, because he told you, because Daniel lives in the time of Babylon. He's starting from where he is in history and looking forward into the future. That's generally how prophecy works. The prophet's day, he tells you where he's at, and then he tells you into the future. Okay? So he sees, oh, sorry. Did we go back? Yeah. So he tells you the first one is Babylon. So the lion with eagle's wings would line up with that, which is very interesting, because it's similar to the way that if you read the description, it's lions with eagle's wings was the symbol of Babylon on their walls. So no surprise there. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the details of all the beasts. We could do that. It would take a lot of time. But just notice the order. The first one is Babylon. And then we need to know which kingdom came after Babylon. Well, the Bible tells you that. It's Medo-Persia. We're going to go into that here in a second. The third one is Greece, and the last one is Rome. Okay, let me prove this. I just said that, but let me prove it to you. Again, here's the parallels. Daniel 2 sees a head of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron. Here it is on a chart. Head of gold compares to the Babylonian Empire, compares to the lion with eagle's wings. The chest and arms of silver is Medo-Persia, that's the bear. Greece is the leopard with 4 heads, and then the legs of iron is the Roman Empire that is divided into 10 parts. Okay. 4 beasts, 4 different types of metals. Those this is the basics of understanding prophecy, if you understand these 4 world empires. Okay. Daniel 2 tells us. Now I'm going to prove that these are the 4 empires that it's talking about. Daniel 2:38 says, "You are the head of gold." Daniel tells the king of Babylon, "You are the head of gold." So the first empire is Babylon. Then he says, "After you will arise another kingdom inferior to yours, just as silver is inferior to gold." Who conquered Babylon? That would tell us who the second empire is. Well, we don't need to guess. Daniel lived to see it happen. It was the Medo-Persian Empire. And we saw this in Daniel chapter 5. And read the whole chapter. This is where we get the phrase, the writing on the wall. Daniel sees this vision of a hand floating in the air by itself with no body, writing words on the wall. And it's the words of doom to the king of Babylon, and saying, "Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians." And that night, the Medo-Persian Empire came in, killed the king of Babylon, and conquered. So we know who the second kingdom is. There's no guessing. Daniel chapter 5 tells you it's the Medo-Persian Empire, symbolized by 2 arms. 2 arms, right? Because it's 2 kingdoms united. It's the Medes and the Persians. 2 arms and chest of silver. And the Persians were very rich, and they used silver. They had lots of silver, which is is the chest of arms in silver. And it's the bear in Daniel 7, which is symbolized by a bear raised up on one side, symbolizing there was 2 different parts to the kingdom, and one was higher than the other. When the Medes and the Persians, they were a combination, but there's always one that's higher than the other. Today, you don't even hear about the Medes. It's just called the Persian Empire. That's because the Persians eventually became higher than the Medes, although it started the other way. But those are just history details. Anyway, we don't need to guess. It's the Medo-Persian Empire. That is the second kingdom. Okay? Who conquered the Medo-Persian Empire? History tells us it's Greece. Then a third kingdom of Greece. The Bible also describes this by name in Daniel chapter 8. There is another set of symbols, and please don't get confused by this. Basically, kind of ignore this for a second. I mean, you could read about it if you want, read the whole chapter. We can study it another day, but new symbols are used here for these 2 kingdoms, and the symbols are a goat and a ram. And in this prophecy, the goat and the ram is the ram having two horns is the kings of Media and Persia. Again, it's a two-part empire, Medo-Persia, and it's conquered by a goat, which is the kingdom of Greece. That's the idea. Medo-Persia comes first, Greece conquers. That's in Daniel chapter 8. Read the whole chapter if you don't believe me. Read it. You'll see the symbols. It's very clear. Greece conquers Medo-Persia, mentioned by name. So that is the third empire. And history confirms this. After the Persian Empire comes the Greek Empire. This was all predicted, by the way, by Daniel, which is amazing. So we have the first three mentioned in the Bible by name. Babylon's the first one, then Medo-Persia, according to Daniel 5, then Greece, according to Daniel 8, and history confirmed this. Did I make up any of this interpretation so far? No, I'm just telling you what the Bible says. Three empires, and these are the three. In the book of Daniel itself, it tells you by name which empires are the first three. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. Same one as the first three beasts. The lion, the bear, the leopard. Okay, who is the fourth beast? Well, anyone who has taken basic world history in high school can tell you which world empire came after Greece. It was the Roman Empire. And the entire New Testament is about that fourth world empire. Well, it's during the time of that fourth world empire. And it is depicted as being as strong as iron. The fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. And that was the Roman Empire. The entire New Testament takes place during the time of Rome. It's Roman soldiers who crucified Christ using iron nails in their crucifixion. Iron was, it's kind of the ages, right? We went from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, and that is part of the reason why Rome was able to conquer the world, because it used iron, not completely, but a lot of its military materials, armor, and so forth, they're using iron instead of bronze. So it's a fitting symbol, and they were known as this ruthless, powerful kingdom. Whereas Babylon started as this glorious kingdom. Don't get me wrong, they were powerful, but they were very glorious and gold and almost ornate. You had one of the seven wonders of the world in Babylon. It was the lion. It was the golden empire, the head of gold. It was the lion, which is the king of the beasts. It's royal. And as you go along, the world empires kind of change, and they get less spectacular in showiness, but more powerful in just brute force. And by the time you get to Rome, you're talking about an empire that was they figured out how to rule the world with an iron fist. And they would do it with horrible things like, if you get out of line, we will crucify you, which was a horrible thing, powerful deterrent. And so it was, they figured out as evil men ruling the world, how to rule it with an iron fist. That was the Roman Empire. It's the fourth beast. It's the fourth empire in Daniel's prophecy. Okay. So to summarize, head of gold is Babylon, same as the lion. Chest and arms of silver, Medo-Persian Empire, same as the bear. Belly and thighs of brass or bronze, it's the Greek Empire, same as the leopard. And then the legs of iron, it's the Roman Empire, which is eventually divided into the 10 toes. And this is the fourth beast, which there's a dinosaur here. We don't know what it looks like because the Bible doesn't tell you. It doesn't describe it as an animal. It just says it's terrible. It's just a horrible beast, and it has 10 horns. 10 toes, 10 horns. So 4 empires, the fourth one being broken up into 10 pieces. That is the 4 kingdoms. If you understand this, and it's pretty basic, you have got the foundation for understanding the rest of end times prophecy. Because now you have a starting point. You have a reference point in history for everything else that comes after this. And you can see a pattern in the Bible in how prophecy is done. Starts in the time of the prophet, then goes forward piece by piece. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? Right? Now, we're almost done here. already. But we need to look at the end of time now. It says the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, but this kingdom, the Roman Empire, it went from 168 BC before Christ to about 476 AD. Rome wasn't built in a day, didn't fall in a day, but that's a general estimate of the day or the year that the Roman Empire fell. About 1500 years ago, about 500 AD, after the time of Christ. The problem is, the book of Daniel 2 and 7, chapters 2 and 7, the prophecies extend all the way until the end of time. In chapter 2 and 7, both prophecies go to the end of time. So, what happens after 500 AD? That was 1500 years ago. That's a big gap of time, 1500 years. What happens next? After the four empires, the four world empires, what happens next? Because the prophecy extends all the way to the end of time, and it's been 1500 years. The pattern of the prophecies is you start in the time of the prophet, which is Daniel. He's in the time of Babylon. And then he looks to what happens immediately after, then after, then after. So if you were to follow that pattern, Daniel should tell us what happens after the Fourth Empire in this 1500-year gap since Rome fell. What happens after that? Right? Again, Daniel chapter 2 and 7 go all the way till the end of time. Let me show you this. This is Daniel 2 verses 44 through 45. Remember, it starts with the head and it goes down this statue. So by the time we get to the toes, that's the end of time. That's the idea. It's like a clock using the statue of a man, starting from the head, getting to the end of time. It talks about the Fourth Empire being divided into the feet, part of iron, part of clay, and the toes. And it says, in the days of these kings, in other words, the divided Roman Empire. And that's what happened in history. Rome wasn't conquered by a fifth empire. It was divided into pieces by a bunch of barbarian tribes, just broke it up. There was no fifth empire after Rome. It just broke up into pieces. In the days of these kings, in other words, the divided Roman Empire, read the chapter so you can see that I'm telling you the truth. That's the context. In the days of these kings, the divided Roman Empire, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Now that's the end of time. That's God's kingdom. That's heaven. And it says, inasmuch as you saw that there's a stone, that the stone was cut out of a mountain without hands. So there's this stone. I didn't read this to you before, but in the vision, there's a stone that's cut out of a mountain without hands, and it hits the image in the feet. So inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. So this stone that hits the image in the feet is a symbol of God setting up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, conquering the previous four. So follow me in this vision. Follow the idea. It's a clock. It starts with Babylon at the top, at the head, and it works down. By the time you get to the feet and toes, it's the end of time. And when it gets there, a stone comes, a rock comes and hits the image on the feet, breaks them all into pieces, and then in the vision, again, read this for the sake of time. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. But in Daniel 2, it describes how this stone becomes a great mountain and covers the whole earth. That is God setting up his kingdom. He destroys the world empires. He comes at the end of time at the toes. That's the timing. Destroys them, destroys the statue, and that rock becomes a mountain which covers the whole planet. That's God's kingdom on earth. The kingdom of heaven on earth. Okay. That's the end of time. And if you are familiar with the Bible, you know who is the rock. Jesus is the rock. It tells us that in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, it says, and that rock was Christ. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Read the first about 4 verses, and you'll see that Paul says the rock is Christ. So a rock is a symbol of Jesus. This is depicting the second coming at the end of time, at the end of the statue at the toes. Got me? All right. Same thing happens in Daniel 7 using different symbols. Daniel 7, he says, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, capital S, capital M, coming with the clouds of heaven. Who is the Son of Man who comes with the clouds of heaven? That is Jesus. That's the second coming that's being described here. Then to him, that's Jesus, capital H, to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. It sounds very similar to this. The God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Same idea. So Daniel 2 and 7 both describe the second coming and the end of time at the end of their visions. But again, this happened the Roman Empire fell 1,500 years ago. It was divided up 1,500 years ago. What happens in the gap between the fall of Rome, what happens after the fall of Rome, and now for 1,500 years, which power comes into power during that time and fills that gap? Imagine this in your mind, like a timeline. You see Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then there's this big gap for 1,500 years and then the second coming. Who fills the gap? Which power fills the gap? Because the pattern in prophecy is this empire, then this empire, then this empire, and then something happens. There's some power in place for 1,500 years. That's the pattern of the prophecy. We would expect the prophet to tell us at least the basics of what happens for this 1,500 years. The answer to that question is the little horn of Daniel 7. And that is the most important part of Daniel chapter 7. It is the part of the chapter. If you read it, and I recommend reading the whole chapter, you'll see that more verses are devoted to this little horn than all the other 4 world empires. It is the most important part. That's why it gets a 1,500 year period. So next lesson, we are going to focus on the little horn exclusively. We're going to identify who the little horn is. We're going to see which power came into power after the Roman Empire fell and has been around for the last 1,500 years, all the way until the end of time. This little horn power is the Antichrist of prophecy. It's the little horn. If you compare its description to Revelation 13, it's the same as the beast that comes out of the sea in the first half of Revelation 13. It's the same as the great harlot of Revelation 17. Compare the description. It's the same thing. Again, multiple symbols for one power. Just as Babylon was described as a head of gold and also a lion with eagle's wings, the little horn is described in many different places in the Bible, but it is the Antichrist power. We're going to expose that in our next lesson. And you are going to be amazed. This is a shocking lesson, but one that is so clear, there is no getting around the interpretation. The Bible's going to tell you who it is. You're not even, just like the Bible told you who the first, second, third, and fourth empire is, you're not going to have to guess. It's going to make it so clear, it'll become obvious. And now that we have set our reference points in history, the 4 world empires, 1, 2, 3, 4, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then this gap in history, it's going to become very clear who this is. All right, so we're done today. We have looked at the New World Order in Revelation 18, the connection between Daniel and Revelation, and now we've looked at the Prophecy 101, the basics of prophecy, which is those 4 world empires in Daniel's 2 and 7. Next lesson, we're going to look at Daniel 7 and the little horn. Again, do not miss that one. That's going to be amazing. And then we're basically done with Daniel for this series, and we're going to go back into Revelation at that point. And we still have some amazing stuff to look at. We're going to see America in prophecy. We're going to see secret societies. It's going to be amazing. So continue on in these lessons. Thank you so much for paying attention. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm going to be posting these lessons also on as a podcast version on Spotify and Apple. Follow me on X and Instagram, and of course here on YouTube and Rumble. Share these. Thank you so much, and we will see you in the next lesson as we continue our study on the New World Order and Bible prophecy. God bless you.